Hello and welcome to Saving Lives in Slow Motion. Today, I'd like to talk about monkey brain. Now, monkey brain is something that features in my book, The Health Fix, and some of you will have heard of it and some of you won't. And essentially, it refers to a more primitive part of our brains called the limbic system that, when you look at the behaviours of monkeys, monkeys are very much driven by this part of the brain. They do have an adult human portion to their brain called the prefrontal cortex, but it's not as developed as it is in humans. And in essence, the reason I think it's such an important topic to dedicate a podcast episode to is once you realise that a lot of the things that you do day to day or think day to day are because of this monkey brain coming to the fore, and we'll dive into what that means and how it works a little bit later, you're able to control it much more. So to give you a really quick bunch of examples of the kind of thing that your monkey brain can make you do, it's when you lose your temper at someone, or get involved in road rage, or eat a whole packet of chocolate biscuits in one go without thinking, or perhaps, power smoke 5 fags on the trot, or also just sit scrolling mindlessly on your phone for hours on end. All of these things have something in common, and what they have in common, all of those scenarios, is a lack of awareness of your brain being sucked in, if you like, by the moment. And that kind of impulsive, pleasure-seeking, angry, all those things, although they're slightly different, are monkey brain driven. Now, it's interesting because I have relatively poor impulse control. I've always been one of those people where, when I was younger, my parents would go, "Oh, you just get carried away too easily." And I always used to just think, it's because I'm so excited about things. But they were right. I didn't really have an off switch with certain things. I'd forget important things as a result of just making sure I had a great time. And part of me does wonder, whether I have tendencies towards being quite inattentive. But one of the things that's really helped me is just being aware of my monkey brain and when it's hijacking me. In very simple terms, you can think of the monkey brain, which is, and if you look at diagrams, and I'll post show notes, obviously, the monkey brain, the limbic system, is sort of inside, if you like, the brain, and the prefrontal cortex, the adult brain, is the outermost part, so the newest part in terms of our development. But you can think of the limbic system as being a fast-thinking brain that can't think. So that's why it's impulsive. You suddenly get, let's just take a fictitious offer. Oh, would you like a piece of chocolate cake now, or wait till the end of the week when there'll be 2 pieces of chocolate cake instead? And the monkey brain will always go for the cake now, pretty much, because they want immediate pleasure. They can't really control their thoughts and emotions. Whereas as humans, we have that adult level thinking. But as I'm saying this, I'm sure you'll think, hang on a minute, I do that monkey brain thing myself quite a lot. And this is why I want to explore this, because if you can master how to control your inner monkey, then a lot of things in your life are going to get better. Not always possible, but it's worth a go. So if we just think about different parts of the brain, the adult human part of the brain that I'm talking about, called the prefrontal cortex, which is really at the top, at the front of the brain, part of the higher thinking bit of the brain, if you like, that is exactly what it does. It's there for planning and analysis and logic and thinking, in inverted commas. When you say to a teenager in particular, what were you thinking? Or you just don't think, do you? That's a very common thing that you hear people saying to other people, particularly teenagers. And that's what that adult prefrontal cortex helps with. It's that logical thought. And if you're thinking like that most of the time and you're very considered, then you'll tend to make balanced decisions and be able to control yourself and your emotions. Interestingly, I mentioned toddlers and teenagers, that those are both 2 times in life because of growth and hormonal changes that actually the monkey brain comes to the fore. That is exactly why you sometimes see difficulty in self-control with teenagers and, of course, toddlers, which is more understandable. So that's the adult thinking part of the brain. The monkey brain is further inside, if you like. And so, looking back thousands of years, it developed before the adult brain. So primates, although they do have the adult brain parts, they're not developed in the same way that ours are. So they do have a prefrontal cortex, but it just doesn't work anywhere near as well. And the limbic system, which is this part in the midbrain, also contains a part of the brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala is the bit of our brain that becomes scared or frightened and is responsible for fight or flight. So you can see, again, I'm no expert on monkey behavior, but I've been around them, on holidays and things like that. They exhibit that kind of fast-thinking behavior. And, one time I remember seeing this firsthand with monkeys was on a trip to India, actually, where we were on our honeymoon, and we'd taken extended time off to travel around India. Amazing time, actually. It was back in the year 2000, but we kind of landed in Mumbai and went to a place called Elephanta Island, which is just off the coast. And there are lots of monkeys there, but we just didn't realise quite how vicious they could be. So one of them just sort of jumped out of a tree, stole my wife's samosa, proceeded to eat it, and then just started throwing stones at us. It wasn't funny at the time, actually, but and again, we've seen similar with macaques in Gibraltar, stealing sandwiches and the like. So one of the interesting things when we move towards us, because it's all well and good understanding the theory behind monkey brain, that is interesting is what happens, and when you take the amygdala in particular, not only is it responsible for fight or flight, but in terms of memory and traumatic experiences, it can also trigger very impulsive behaviours. So one of the things about monkeys is that they can often exhibit behaviours that we might, in lay terms, call paranoia. Their survival instinct and fear that someone is going to attack their progeny, or fear that someone's going to steal their food or whatever. And in humans, these older parts of the brain, like the amygdala, can really come to the fore when we're reminded of something traumatic. So they can be very simple things. For example, so I'm going to give you one about me, which isn't traumatic, but illustrates the point really well, because I think lots of people have things like this. So when I was growing up, as I said before, I was a bit inattentive, and both my mum and dad, and to a lesser extent my brother, would make this assumption that somehow I was clumsy or cat-handed. And, it wasn't something I really noticed until they kept saying it. And the reality was I probably wasn't any more clumsy than anyone else. Yeah, maybe I dropped a few things, but I definitely used to forget things. I'd forget it was, violin lessons and leave my violin at home or whatever. So absent-minded, yes. But and many years later, in 2010, I think I was making a programme with Channel 5. And one of the things that we had to do was chop up some food in a kitchen, and the producer director who was shooting it made this comment and just went, "Oh my God, I don't think I've ever seen a more clumsy doctor," just because I'd dropped something on the floor, and then I think we were trying to set the room up, and I bashed the corner of the table into the door frame. What was funny was my immediate kind of response internally was one of, I don't know what I felt. It was weird. I felt this surge of adrenaline, and it wasn't that I was angry. but it absolutely triggered that time from my childhood when, people might mock me or laugh at me or whatever. But I sort of laughed it off, and I go, well, it's not the first time someone said that to me, and I think these labels, and again in the book actually I talk about how people can label you based on your behaviours, and in some ways that can be quite unhelpful because it can write certain people off. And if you're not careful, you start believing those things, thinking, hang on, I'm clumsy, so I can't do this, or I shouldn't be able to carry that, or whatever. Now that's a slightly trite example, but if we extrapolate that and you have someone who has had major trauma or lots of adverse events in their life, then you can see how certain events that happen to them now, or just innocuous things that are going on, whether it's watching something on TV or listening to a song or smelling something, can trigger these feelings. And that is to do with our monkey brain. Now, if we're not talking about deep levels of trauma, so my example, which was not a serious one in terms of pathology, and quite common, I'm guessing, what I did in that moment was I used my adult brain to kind of calm my inner monkey down, because I could have reacted really badly. And I suspect if that had happened 10 years previously, that would have been it. I wouldn't have been able to carry on filming because I would have felt really down, and, all of those sort of things. Stinking thinking, as I call it, where you just get carried away in this spiral of negativity. And in those settings, just knowing that it's your monkey brain that is walking towards the cupboard to raid it for comfort foods that are just not going to go back into that cupboard because you're going to binge the whole thing because you're tired, you've had a bad day, and you want to make yourself feel better. That's monkey brain. And sometimes we just can't help feeling like that, even though we know afterwards we're going to feel terrible after eating, 4 donuts in one sitting or whatever it is. I've done it. I've been there. I know. But if you just stop, and whether this is to do with road rage or whether it's to do with, how you react to the rude checkout operator at the supermarket, you don't know what's going on in their life, just check yourself and take that extra second before reacting. Now, it's easy for me to say this because I tend to find that the people I can't control my monkey brain with often are my own family or friends, but that's again in itself a bit odd, but I think most people find that. So one of the things I haven't talked about is the chemistry of this, and again, I don't want to bore you by going on and on about it, so I'll post some links, but the main neurotransmitter involved in all of this is dopamine, which many of you will know is involved in reward. And what's interesting is that when you look at certain disease states, for example, schizophrenia, which is a significant mental health condition, you'll see that a lot of the work and research has been done on dopamine pathways, and a lot of the medication used to treat schizophrenia works on those very pathways. And of course, as you know, the model of diseases and what I talk about in the book about the health loop, genetics is a very important part in this, and often in schizophrenia there's a big role played by genes. So what's my summary? I guess my summary is that for most of us, there are times every day when our inner monkey comes to the fore. And if you can, just take that extra second and recognise when it's happening. So the times it's most likely to happen is when you're sleep deprived or feeling tired or stressed or hurt and you're looking for immediate comfort. And hey, sometimes you need it, whether it be a hug or a nice cup of tea. But if it's something that you're going to regret afterwards, do whatever you can to get your adult brain to kind of override that inner monkey. Okay, so that was Monkey Brain. I hope you enjoyed that, and it's going to be useful to you as you go through your day. As always, thank you for listening. Do let me know if you want me to cover anything in particular. You can find me on the usual socials on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And until next time, do take care. Stay well. Bye for now.